Hi, and welcome to the It's a Good Start podcast with your hosts Mike Lander and Kevin Gibbons. The aim of our show is to help scale-up entrepreneurs master the best of what other people have already figured out so that you can unlock your own potential. We started it because we've both been entrepreneurs for over 25 years and wanted to share our knowledge and our guest knowledge. We're all about actionable insights. We want you to take away one or two things per episode that can help you move the ball forward in your business. We really hope you enjoy and keep coming back for more. Dan Kirby, amazing to have you as a guest on our podcast. Thanks for joining us. From where are you this morning?
I'm in Bakewell in Darbyshire.
Excellent. And you've been apparently in a cold shower this morning.
I have.
Do we need to ask why?
Obviously I had to cool myself down when I looked at my diary and realised that I was going to spend a period of time with the legendary Mike Lander.
And Kevin Gibbons.
Kevin Gibbons. Obviously, I was getting a bit steamy, so I thought I'd cool myself down. Well, I'm like all, I guess, many middle-aged entrepreneurs. I'm now got a Wim Hof fetish. So
okay, very good. I wish I was middle-aged. I'm now past middle-aged, Dan. I'm 58.
Well, yeah, well,
I'll have a bus pass soon.
Well, I think you can still get in a cold shower at 58. At 60, maybe not.
It'd kill me, mate. I'd probably die.
Well,
is it like a minute or like 10 or like...
probably. I think it's about 3 or 4 minutes probably.
Okay.
Listen, I never want to, but I always enjoy it.
So what happens, Dan? Kind of like, because clearly I don't have that regime, but I'm fascinated by it. I saw the Wim Hof thing, brilliant. What happens to your kind of, what does it do to you physiologically and mentally, and what happens?
Right. Well, I'm going to really butcher Wim Hof's argument here, but his whole thing is that we in the modern Western world have got it really comfortable. Yeah, we're kind of we're not that far away, evolutionarily speaking, to our ancestors, really. But so what you've got is your temperature is always at equilibrium. Right, so it's a cold day today, so we whack the heating up, we put on extra jumpers, and we stay at steady state temperature. And then we get in the car and we stay in a steady state temperature, and we go into an office and we stay, and we're always at the same temperature,
22 degrees.
Yeah, like whatever it would be. And you don't get those kind of, if you were living in a cave somewhere, you would be very, very cold some days, and you'd be warm next to the fire, and you have these kind of more a distance between temperatures, right? And his argument is that you there's parts of your immune system, for example, and parts of like how you're built as a human being, animal, that isn't being accessed because you're at that steady state temperature. So to get better health results and get better kind of particularly mental health results, you can kind of the cold unlocks this part of your being, your part of your immune system. I don't know the specific ins and outs of the specific on that, but that's the basic gist of it. And I think there's something to that, really, because what I find personally is I kind of have wrestled with mental health things over the years, and also wrestled with stress over the years, and that's something we can talk about as an entrepreneur. Is something that's part of your life, right? And how you handle that, how you kind of ride the wave of stress, fear, bullshit, and whatever is part of this thing. And so I've been working on that. So this cold shower thing is really, for me, a part of a daily practice, which helps me kind of reset myself and get ready to go into the day. And I will like to reassure everybody, I never, ever want to go into a cold shower first thing in the morning. Definitely not when it's -7 outside, which it is this morning. Right? So, what happens is, and what's quite interesting is not only does it sort of reset you physiologically, there's a little battle that goes on between your will and your body.
Yes.
Right? Like getting out of bed in the morning, right? You don't want to get out of bed and but then you eventually maybe win the battle. So when you're, I don't know, stood in front of the shower with nothing on, going, it's really cold and I'm going to get in the shower and it's really cold in the shower. You don't want it. It's like it feels like a violent act is about to occur on your person. and so you go in and I'm like, whining and bitching and moaning to myself. And then I get in, and then afterwards, it's like it's weird. It's like a reset button for my forehead. Like, imagine the kind of frontal cortex underneath your forehead. There's sometimes when I'm about to leave the shower and it's cold, and I go back in and go, look, I just need to get that feeling. And you put the jet of water, particularly if it's very cold, on your forehead, and you can't think of anything else. It's like a short, if anything, it's a shortcut to meditative
Yeah.
depth. So your whole frontal cortex shuts down. You can't think of anything else. Once you get your breathing under control, which is obviously something that is a thing, but you can do. You just get your breathing under control. All you've got is the you and the sort of pure feeling of ice cold on your forehead, which then becomes this sort of single kind of experience where you can't really differentiate between the jet of water and you.
Yeah.
And then but your brain switched off, is my point. Yeah, you haven't got this electrical activity firing in about 55 million different directions.
Exactly.
So kind of, and it doesn't take a lot to, and suddenly I've got to tell you, I go into the shower sometimes, even after meditation and working out and all sorts, feeling stressed, and I'll come out of it feeling pretty relaxed.
Wow.
And so, it's a way of resetting yourself. And as a hack, I would say it's quite an easy one. If you're looking at sort of, and again, it's not nice, but okay, here's the other thing. You win a battle. First thing in the morning, you win a battle. And once you've won that battle, every other battle feels a bit more straightforward.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Speaking to the accountant, getting the marketing thing set up, doesn't really matter. Once you've defeated the cold shower, it's all pretty relaxed after that.
Downhill from there. Yeah, I've tried it before and actually quite enjoyed it in a weird way for that reason. Like, you don't enjoy it when you're doing it, but you feel better afterwards. And maybe you need to get back into it. But I do believe in a lot of stuff like that, and even like the breath work and stuff that just lifts your mood. Or there's so much that you don't even think of day to day that actually can change your behavior.
So something that's not a cold shower, isn't running in the cold, but is a way of breaking patterns, I've found. So as you know, Dan, I'm into vinyl. We both share a passion for music. Weren't you a DJ?
I was.
I thought you were in Manchester.
And Nottingham, actually. Nottingham and Manchester. I have a checkered past.
Yeah.
If I still do DJ, but not to anybody else, it's just me. I do have a SoundCloud account where I post my mixes.
There we are. Good mate of mine, Ricky Chopra, does as well. He's published 200 tracks. In fact, he did the soundtrack to It's a Good Start. So shout out to Ricky. Yeah, Ricky's an amazing guy. Got a day job, but he does music in his weekends and evenings.
Amazing. Yeah, well, music is a big passion of mine. So putting it together in a continuous mix is great. In fact, what I do is I put this music together, stick it onto SoundCloud. And then when I go, I like to run. And I listen to it whilst running, and which I did last night actually. And then what happens is, if you do this sort of semi-regularly, I've been doing this for like 10 years, and posting the mixes. You go back and listen to old ones, and it's like someone's curated the best selection of music. Yeah, you've kind of forgotten what you did.
Yeah.
So
So the music thing for me, we all have a problem sitting at our desk. Pain in the arse. We sit at our desks. We don't move. It's not good for us. So I love vinyl. So I've been collecting vinyl. I did collect it for years and years, stopped, and then came back, bought myself a deck, and started collecting vinyl again. Well, a vinyl side's 20 minutes. So you're forced to get out of your chair, turn the record over, and sit down again. And it's not like a cold shower, Dan, clearly, but it gives you a break. It forces you to get up, have a little bit of movement, do something, and then sit down again. And it forces you to do kind of 20-minute activities. And the research says there's a reason that TED Talks, by the way, I think you cannot be more than 18 and a half minutes or something, 19 minutes. Because what the TED Talk community realized was that's the maximum kind of concentration time for a particular topic if it's quite intense. And then you need a break. So they make it, you got to be able to get your message across in basically 19, 20 minutes. But there we are. We all have our own methods of having a mental break.
For focus, that's really valuable. There's an app I use. I think it's just called Pomodoro Timer or something. But it's very similar to what you're describing. You have 25 minutes of pure focus. So when I use this, I don't check my email. I leave my phone in another room. I just have 25 minutes of, I need to put proposals together or write a blog post or whatever it is. That's where I need to shut myself off from the world, because otherwise I won't do it and I get distracted. And then it allows you like 5 minutes of, now check your email, check your phone, make a cup of tea, whatever you want to do. But it is that, 20, 25 minutes, just one thing and single task, get it done. And then, so if that's your stopper or break point, if you like. If you're like flipping the vinyl, it's like focus, and then you've got something where take 5 minutes off, go again.
And it's because I don't have to think about it, because the music stops, so I have to get up and turn it over. And I also, what I do on that point is, on my Outlook, I just stick it in work offline mode. I mean, how simple's that?
Yeah.
Because if the thing pings in the background, it distracts me. So I just stick it in work offline mode, and I write my proposals, or I write my blog, or, I edit something, or whatever I'm doing. Yeah. So anyway, we did have some questions, Dan. Should we talk about the questions?
Go for it. Please do.
I think those topics are great, though, because it's like, these are the things that, how do entrepreneurs almost like control themselves to get stuff done in some way. I think like the routines, the habits, the behaviors. I do find that stuff fascinating, because it's part of how you, certainly in terms of like the learned strengths I know I've had, like organization and just pure focus. Yeah. It's not always natural, but you have to, if you want to be successful, you need to figure out how your brain works best and how you get the best results.
Exactly. I mean, so on that point, I'm reading, so Ray Dalio, whether people love him or hate him, one of the wealthiest men in the world, whether that's a good or a bad thing is a very different discussion. However, he's now moved into a stage in his life whereby he's very committed to passing on his knowledge. And I've picked up his recent book. He wrote this book called Principles, and now he's got this kind of principles, kind of your diary thing, where you make up your own principles. But he talks about the way that he kind of thinks and the way that he works and what he does. And to that point, Kevin, one of the things, I only just started reading it, so I've only got a bit of it. But one of the things he talks about is, he says, if you look at a lot of people who are so-called successful, however you define success, but people that tend to get things done and move forward with their life, what they collect around them is very different thinkers, people with very contrary views. So he said, if I've got a problem to solve, I build a kind of hypothesis, and then I talk to my mates. Now, his mates are probably Bill Gates, probably a decent person to talk to about tech, for example. But he talks to people who've got very, very often different, contrary, but thought through views. And he said it stops you taking risks that haven't been thought through, because you find people with a different view that complements your view of that situation and the risks, and then you get a more balanced. You still may take the risk, but you've now got a more balanced set of inputs.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Ray Dalio, by the way. I've got a great story about how he came to publish Principles.
Go on then.
What it's worth. Well, I met a guy in Toronto. In fact, in 2017 in Toronto, I was doing some workshop. I was attending a coaching program, and the guy I was sat next to one day had, in the course of conversation, he'd sold his business recently. An Italian-American guy, and after a little while, he goes, he was sharing that to the person that helped him sell his business was Ray Dalio.
Good God. Okay.
At which point I was like,
right.
What? Now, I would say that the people in this room were pretty high-end entrepreneurs, right? But that was a bit of a shock. And anyway, so how did he get Ray Dalio to advise him on how to sell his business? By the way, he sold his business for a much bigger multiple than perhaps it was, it would have been initially. Well, it's because Ray Dalio initially published Principles, which are his principles by which he runs his life and his business. He originally published them on his website as a PDF. Just a PDF you download, like a Word document.
I've got the download.
Really?
Yeah.
So my guy had downloaded the PDF and had applied a lot of the thinking to his business, and it had done very well. So he felt a great sense of gratitude to Ray Dalio. And one of this guy's principles that he had was to never resist a generous impulse.
Right.
Yeah. So my guy got one of the world's best book designers to design the book Principles based on the PDF. He produced 2 copies and sent them to Ray Dalio, saying, "Here you go. I want to say thank you very much for the information you give me. It's really helping my business. Here's a gift to you." Right? And Ray Dalio phoned him, went on the CBT, said, "Oh my God." Rang him up, said, "Oh my God, thank you so much for this. It's so generous, blah, blah, blah." And that was the book that is now the global best-selling Principles. Right? And if you go to
with the swirly line on the front, yeah.
So the hardback cover, the sort of nice material cover, that is the design that he was produced, and he's acknowledged in the back of principles. If you've got it, he tells that story. He doesn't go into that much detail, but basically he does acknowledge it in the back. He's the guy who prompted it, and so this guy. But this was an intentional thing this guy did at the time, was to be. So one of his principles was to never resist a generous impulse, and it's something I try and remember, because sometimes you think, oh, I'll buy a book for that person, or I'll buy a gift for that person, and you never follow through. But his thing was just always follow through on it, and the reciprocity that was created.
Correct.
Made him a far, quotes, more successful businessman, because he got Ray Dalio on side by giving a gift to Ray. One of the most successful people in the world, he gifted him something with no expectation of a return.
Have you read Cialdini's book?
Persuasion?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the reciprocity thing, yeah.
Amazing. So on this point, there's lots of talk about, cold calling, and it's not dead, and you can still break through, and yeah, I'm sure that's all absolutely true. So I'll tell a story about, have you heard of Jeb Blount?
No.
So Jeb Blount wrote a book called Fanatical Prospecting. So in the sales world, Jeb Blount's a bit of a kind of hero figure for a lot of salespeople, particularly in the States, about his content. He's a very engaging keynote speaker. He's written 10 books. And this fanatical prospecting thing is all about, basically, how do you kind of build a pipeline? And it's about mental attitude and all sorts of things. So I read Jeb's book and thought, this is quite good, like this. And I was thinking, he's got a big audience, and people, my community is the sales community. So I sell to the sales community. Mm-hmm. So I reached out to Jeb one day and said, Jeb, you've got a podcast called Sales Gravy. I'd love to be a guest. I'm an ex-procurement director. I'd like to talk about how salespeople engage with procurement and what the problems are. And he wrote back almost saying, can't stand procurement people. That'd be brilliant. They're a pain in the neck. And he recognizes they're a key part of the sales process and how valuable they are if you get the negotiation right. And we had this discussion. So he invited me onto the podcast, had a great discussion, really valuable, about how salespeople should engage with procurement people. So I was like, wow, I got into Jeb's podcast. That generated business. Genuinely, I had inbound calls off the back of that episode. And then I did a workshop with him, and now I'm one of his instructors. But your point, Dan, about you've got to do something. You have to step into a situation. And my kind of gift to Jeb was, I said, look, I'm an ex-buyer. I'd love to talk to your audience about being a buyer and what it means as a seller, just to give my time. So you're giving something without an expectation of something in return, because it's a good thing to do. I had Damien Horner on a podcast, videocast months ago, and it was brilliant. It went really, really well. And we were talking about something, and I said, I'll send you a book. And Damien went, yeah, fine. Okay, thanks, Mike. So I bought the book and sent it to him. And he rang back and went, you sent the book. That's amazing. And he's been on the podcast as well. I think stuff like that, we've kind of forgotten how to do. And it's just about thinking it through, doing what you said you'd do, and showing up and giving someone something without expecting something in return. Kevin, examples?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I do agree. I think it's underused. I think there's, it's definitely like both ways. If someone goes out of their way to, certainly I've had this before where people have sent a book and it has been, okay, that's quite nice because we spoke about it the day before or something, and it's ended up in a post. But it does make you think more about, okay, well, what can I do for them if you're on the receiving end? And I think both ways, but it's got to be genuine. It's got to be like, this is useful. You can't just...
Exactly.
I read a book before which is about how can't remember what it's called, but it was about gifting and how you should send clients gifts, and the gift always seemed to be a set of knives. And
steak knives,
it just felt a bit old school, where it's just like, I'll send your clients a personalized set of like steak knives or whatever, and then you're going to get business from it. But it's like, I think the key is being authentic. If it's, you've had that conversation, they'll appreciate this, that would be useful. Like the Ray Dalio example is great, because that's something that's genuinely useful. Ray Dalio has enough money to buy whatever he wants in the world, pretty much.
Exactly.
If he wanted a book cover, I'm sure he could get himself one. But actually, it's the thought of, oh, you could do something bigger with this. Have you thought of this? And this could be useful for you. That's more important. That, yeah, it's you're putting in that time, that effort, showing gratitude. I did this week as a consultant that helped us with our positioning and kind of our plan to set up a conference event. And I just sent him a polite email. It doesn't even have to be a gift sometimes, but just a thank you, because actually what you've done has really helped us in that journey towards it. And I think just showing a bit of gratitude sometimes is lost. Everyone's busy and they just want to move on to the next. How do you do the next thing without actually stopping to say, oh, this was quite useful. And just, I didn't want anything out of that whatsoever. There's no questions. It was just like, thanks for your help. Really appreciate it. This is what we've done in following up, and you've helped a lot in that journey.
So if anyone's listening to this about, hopefully some people are listening to it, hopefully. So a message for me would be, if you're in the sales role, founders, salespeople, whoever, I'd say do something relevant, really relevant, and don't expect anything in return. And just see what happens. Good things happen. Dan, I cut you off and you're thinking.
No. What I was thinking, I was just reflecting as you were talking, and this whole idea of the giving a gift to Ray Dalio thing, when Ray Dalio doesn't really need a gift, but he obviously likes a gift. Right. He's a human being, and but the thing is the intention and the love and within it. All right, yeah. So it's not just, hey, I bought you a set of steak knives, the best steak knives in the world. It's like, who cares? Like, there's no thought in that. There's no love in that. There's no gift in that. It's just a manipulation.
Yeah,
right? So
exactly. It's a manipulation.
And what I think you've got here is this is actually quite a deep message for any salespeople or CEOs listening, right? What often people perceive as sales, and you'll know this, Mike, but it's very easy to flip into this. Is you're in a world of scarcity. You're trying to get money. You're trying to get sales. You're fighting for every last scrap of morsel of money that's out there. It's a recession. Oh my God, we all need to get it. So what ends up happening is you go into the world to manipulate other people to buy your thing. Yeah, and you manipulate them through words, actions, gifts of steak knives, podcasts, whatever, right? But you're trying to go, no, come over into my funnel. Yeah. Please come down my funnel. My funnel.
Not theirs.
Not their funnel. No, that's bad. Their funnel. Yeah. And it's like this kind of air of, and so, but the reason is because you're actually manipulating people to buy something from you. Yeah. Now, if you were actually acting from a place of service, a place of actual service to the customer, not service to manipulate them to buy your thing, not, we care about our customers when they buy from us, but they can fuck off once they bought from us because we'll stick the price up next year. Yeah, which is basically what most people do. Yeah, if you actually thought about it, it's like, who are my customers really, right? And what are their problems really? Not problems that actually align with what I want to sell them, but genuinely what are their most pressing problems? And how can I actually honor that and serve that and deliver against that so their lives are actually better emotionally and financially and, practically? Actually do that. Not say you do it to shoehorn in the thing that you want to flog them.
Exactly.
Is to actually do that. And this is the thing that, frankly, I've learned in the last 5 years. And it took me a bit of a kicking to get to that. And actually, this spirit of service, this is where my guy sending his book to Ray Dalio did. It's actually trying to serve Ray Dalio, not expect anything in return. Yeah. And this idea of genuine service through the product or your service which you're offering to the world. If you've got that embedded into your product design, into the actual proposition, the sales process is just an honorable conversation where you articulate clearly why you can actually solve actual real problems for the person you're serving, rather than a kind of manipulative thing where you're trying to send some steak knives to get your sale away.
And in that moment, Dan, just before you finish that bit of the story, what will happen is your customer, your prospect, will naturally ask you in a very inquiring way, meaningful way, just talk to me about What was it you do, Dan? Just what? I've got this problem thing we've talked about. What do? You won't have to sell to them. They'll be just interested.
Well, and not only that, if people are interested, and then you sell them something specific that you do. So I'll give you an example, right? So this is how it works for me. So my company is called The Tech Department, and we've been going for nearly 19 years. And for 13 of those years, we built custom software products, digital products for big companies. So we work with NBC Universal to roll out global pieces of software, or Microsoft Advertising to create world first augmented reality stuff that ended up winning gold at the Cannes Lions Awards. And we built BBC Children in Needs fundraising platform and helped them get record fundraising years, year after year, built on a model that we created using data. So big stuff, right? So bully for us, we're really clever, whatever. And then we hit this period in 2017 where we lost a load of money and it all went wrong, okay? Which was a result of bad management.
Right. Who's the manager, Dan?
Oh, fuck. Oh, hang on. Let me look around. Who can I blame? Oh, no, it was me. Yeah, so unfortunately, I had to eat a massive slice of humble pie.
Yeah.
But the irony was, I nearly mentioned it earlier, but in 2017, this is when this all went wrong, was when I was flying to Toronto to do my elite level entrepreneur coaching. And so I was literally sat on the moment when the month when it really became apparent I was about to could lose the business because it was properly a problem. I was sat literally next to the dude that co-founded SpaceX with Elon Musk.
Okay.
Doing a series of like exercises and workshops, feeling like the dunce in the class. Let's put it that way. So I had to like really eat the humble pie. It was quite amusing. But at that time I was really losing all this money. And the point being, I was in the middle of that, losing all the money, my life falling to pieces, my ego smashed into a million smithereens. I realized that I'd got it wrong. And I was thinking, why have I got it wrong? Well, I'll tell you for why. It's that I was not really serving the interests of the customer, right? I was doing what every bugger else does who runs a company like mine, which is someone comes to us with a brief with some money. We go, yeah, cool, let's spend the money on some cool shit. And then we spend it. And then if it impacts positively the client, that's great. But it's not really our primary concern. Yeah, our primary concern is getting the brief, winning the brief off the other competition and doing the work and high-fiving and getting away with it, basically. You know, I'm not doing a good job, doing what we've been asked, but not actually improving the customer's business, really. And that's what was the seed of what undid us, plus a bunch of other stuff, right? But we weren't genuinely serving the client. So in that moment, I figured if I built a method that actually delivered genuine business improvement every time we engaged with somebody to create some software, a digital product, and could measure that, then that's a better premise for building a business over the long term than the previous model. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of obvious when you say it out loud, but that wasn't my thinking for 13 years. And it isn't the thinking in the average tech development agency or digital agency. It isn't now, right? So that was 5 years ago. And the point being is we have a business now that genuinely serves that interest. And it turns out the people who most need that model are early stage startup founders, which is who we work with now, particularly impact-led or social purpose-led startup founders, which is the sort of heart that aligned with the head thing for us, right? It's our purpose really to help that world. Right. So the point is, it's very clear what we do now, and it's built on a principle of service, of genuinely trying to improve the customer's business. So when we speak to people, I speak to people. So it happened yesterday. I spoke to a guy who was introduced to me by a mutual friend who the mutual friend thought would be good to come on my podcast, which we can perhaps speak about. But this guy, we're chatting away, and he goes, and I said in passing what we did. Because he said, what do you do? I said, I told him. And then 10 minutes later, he comes back and goes, hang on, what you do, I think I might need.
Right.
Yeah. And no, he needs it because he's in a kerfuffle with his technology. It's all a bit of a mess. He's hit a bit of a glass ceiling. He needs to scale, and he needs a partner that can help him to do that. And our particular model is really good to make sure you don't spend money unnecessarily. We call it the tech boot camp. So the continuous improvement principle we've embodied in a method we call the Tech Bootcamp. It really allows you just to invest wisely and carefully over time in line with your vision. So the point being is the service is integrated into the business proposition. The principle of service, or actually honoring that. We don't just do stuff for the sake of it. We actually just do what's only appropriate for the customer in that moment. And then we go with them on a journey up the growth curve. So when I describe that to people, when I meet them, they go, well, if it's not for them, they know that's not for them. But if they do know it's for them, they lock onto it.
Yeah.
So the principle of the sales process is actually quite straightforward. You say what I've just said in those words. And if somebody needs it, they go, I need that. And by the way, we have been told repeatedly by people in London, Sweden, Denmark, and South Africa that they don't know anyone in the world doing that. Yeah, so the feedback I'm getting from the world is this is unique.
Right.
And it's built on a single principle, which is genuinely serving your customer.
So, pipeline. Anyone listening to this, the audience, we think, as much as you can tell from podcasts, the audience is entrepreneurs building their businesses, different stages of growth. Pipeline. Just talk about how do you get new customers, Dan? How do you bump into them in the coffee shop? Do you chat online? Do you do podcast? What do you do? What do you find works?
Well, it's a bit of a mix, and we've been experimenting a lot in the last year, but it's a mixture of referral. So our existing customers refer us to people.
Yep.
And people recommend us to people because we do a good job, right? So the product is good.
Yep.
You talk about this kind of manipulation of the sales process. If you've got a really good product and service and you actually do what you say you're going to do, it's the best piece of marketing you can possibly have.
Yeah,
right?
Correct. 100%
and we do deliver on our promises, or we aim to, and you know, obviously sometimes things are difficult and whatever, but that's our ethic. And then we do some cold outreach to people on LinkedIn, but in a very particular way. It's not churning a handle and doing a million different.
And what's that way, Dan? Just to shortcut that.
What do you mean?
You said we do it in a particular way.
Oh, well, it's basically a small volume, high quality, not just going, hey, listen, do you want a sale? It's like engaging with the relevant sort of people by actually engaging with them.
Yeah.
And then we do get a chunk of people, or a percentage of people now coming who see the activity we're doing, like marketing comms activity, then go to the website, then they make an inquiry because like I say, the message fits what they need. We actually solve an actual painful problem.
Yeah.
And then I have a podcast which is called Honey, I Blew Up the Business, which is rooted in the time that I blew up the business, as I mentioned. And so what I do is I interview entrepreneurs about times their businesses went wrong, and then how they brought it back on track and what they learnt. And I've interviewed about 60 different entrepreneurs now, all of whom are very, well, different stages of, quotes, success. But a number of people who've got OBEs and MBEs and successful exits of tens and tens of millions of pounds, and people in Silicon Valley and Barbados, etc. And we're in the top 5% of global podcasts now, which is quite something. Which
well done.
Yeah, it's amazing, really, because we didn't expect that. It was very much a kind of passion project to help people learn from mistakes that I've made. But that has a kind of halo effect around the business. People come to the website and go, who are these guys? And then they look at the podcast and go, all right, well, they're not, just assholes trying to rip me off. They're actually investing in helping other entrepreneurs. And they've got a high quality thing here. It's a media asset that can scale exponentially at zero cost to us once we've invested in the initial content. So that's a thing, and we have another. We're actually starting a podcast network now because it's working so well. And
I was going to say you should do that. Yeah,
a colleague of mine has got a podcast, it's kind of early stage, called the Quick Start Founder. He works for the company now, but he's a very experienced entrepreneur. He left, actually, he was CMO of a financial tech startup in Denmark, which he left to come to work for us because he believes in the mission we have. But he's got ADHD, and I would say 99.9% of founders have ADHD, or might as well have ADHD because they're all over the place chasing shiny things. So the whole idea about quick start founder and how do you harness that energy for the good so you don't self-destruct is his topic. So we've got another one on the back burner which we're going to launch next year.
So Dan, just explain the podcast network concept to the audience because people might not know what it is.
Well, we're just publishing a bunch of podcasts basically, and then I mean that's our network is going to be. We've got a number of things we talk about that are relevant to our audience.
So it's got a common audience type.
Correct.
Different podcast types sat around that common audience type, and you help each other.
Yeah, we're a media ecosystem is the way to think about it. So
exactly.
The tech department is a small business that serves startup founders to build tech products, right? But our startup founder has multiple interests. One of them might be, how do I not self-sabotage? How do I not burn out? How do I not, I'm really lonely and isolated. I'm fearful. Okay, so maybe I'll listen to Honey, I Blew Up the Business because these guys are very experienced and they've been around the block and they're going to speak in plain English. By the way, my mission in Honey, I Blew Up the Business is to make the realest podcast for entrepreneurs in the world, right? So we're actually going to talk real talk. Not fluffy showbiz bullshit LinkedIn profile talk. This is actually, we're going to get into it, like how you felt, what your fears were, what all behind the curtain of what it's like to be an entrepreneur. That's an act of service to my audience, right? So if I'm a founder and I'm listening to that, I get solace from that. And I know this, by the way, because people tell me, and I get reassurance from that and encouragement because I know I'm part of a tribe, a bunch of people. I'm not on my own, right? So that's why the thing's gone well. By the way, we've never advertised for this. It's all word of mouth and we're top 5% in the world, right? And so next year we're going to up the game a little bit. The point being is actually helping the founder. Now,
so this media network, by the way, just media, kind of like this media ecosystem. Do you have a platform for that? Or is it just you refer each other as you talk about each other's podcast?
Yeah, and I'm telling a bit of a future truth here because we've not actually implemented it.
But you're thinking about it.
It's actually in action. It's just like got to unfold somewhat. But yeah, so we'll have a branding like part of the tech department podcast network. We'll have some cross references on the intro, outro, middle bit, whatever, and the biog stuff. We can on our website. We'll have a media page with all the media assets we own. And what will happen is there's a sort of like the ecosystem can push people to it. So some people will be interested in what Honey, I Blew Up the Business does, and some people will be more interested in what Quick Start Founder is about.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so they're both arguably to do with mental health and psychology and philosophy more than, for example, how you build a sales funnel, right? Yep. So it's not tactical executional stuff. It's more about the mindset of the entrepreneur, the founder. And that, in my humble opinion, is the primary piece of technology that you can work on and should work on. And if you don't work on, you're more likely to end up doing what I did in 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah. So unconsciously, you will drive yourself off a cliff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though by many, many metrics. So me in the run up to 2017, by the way, had, lots of gongs, lots of money, lots of international travel and fame. But I drove my business off a cliff. Why? Because I wasn't fully aligned as a human being operating in the world. All right, I was chasing the wrong stuff. And so that was an experience I had to go through to learn what was actually important. And some of these principles are, again, we're going back to the theme of principles, are actually fundamentally critically important because your life will get a lot easier if you work on yourself in that way. So the principle of the podcast actually is basically that, although there's lots of stories and lots of lessons within it. And then if we can kind of help our founders or entrepreneurs in the world to do that, then you talk about persuasion. One of the persuasion principles in Cialdini's book is, quotes, liking, capital L.
Correct.
Yeah. Now, if you're shopping out in the world, or you're a founder looking to build a technology product and outsource that, and you find the tech department, and its value proposition is really clear and really good. But then you look at the media ecosystem and go, hey, these dudes are really laying it out there. They're talking honestly with compassion about very difficult, sensitive subjects, with some sort of humility and experience, perhaps some wisdom that they've learned over the years. Yeah, I like that. These dudes are all right. So I can imagine working with these guys because, hey, they're going to add value to me over and above the transaction of building some code.
So so Kevin, I'm not sure I told you this. One of my clients, about a year ago, no, 6 months ago, whatever it was saying to me about this humanity bit. They said, we've sent your podcast around to all our staff, and they've got, I don't know, 50 odd people. And I said, really? That's very nice, thank you. And they said, yeah, it was the episode. Remember, Kevin, when we did our own stories? You did yours, I did mine. And they sent around my story because obviously I'm working with them. And what happened was, the feedback I got from them as a client, the audience that had listened to it, they said, we know who you are now. We understand who you are as a human being and what's formed you. And Dan, that idea, and I don't think this is widely recognized by the sales community, for example, who I work with a lot, is the old adage, people buy from people, is true for a good reason, because it's true. People buy from people that they start to trust. Trust is a journey, not a destination, and it starts slowly. Well, how do you trust someone? You can read a blog, for sure. You can look at their LinkedIn posts. Yeah, you can do. But there's no tone. There's no humanity in it, often. Whereas you listen to someone's podcast, you can hear the tone of my voice. You can hear the speed at which I speak, the things about which I speak, the things that I hold dear, my principles. That's why podcasting can be so powerful if you're honest and open about who you are.
And the trick is about who you are is the key bit. Right? And so there's people in quotes, business, quotes, sales, put on a mask. I am now selling.
Often called a suit and a tie.
I'm doing a business now. I'm doing business. And actually, well, who are you? And maybe you don't even know. Okay, without getting perhaps, well, yeah, I'm going to get deep now, because frankly, people walk around with a mask that they don't even know they're wearing a mask.
Yeah,
they're acting out a expectation of their parents, peers, culture, and they like going, oh yeah, well, I'm going to be successful at sales because money is good, because I need to have the house and I've got to have this, I've got to have that, right? Where do those patterns and thoughts and intentions come from? Oh, well, on Instagram, everyone's wearing a bloody suit and driving a Ferrari, so I better go and get a Ferrari, aren't I? So, get on it, and sales is where I come at. And but seriously, I'm hamming up a bit here, but like these programs, these pieces of software are running on your mind. Well, I said your psychology is your primary technology. This is software running on your brain. And but is it your software? Primarily, maybe it is. Okay, that's cool. Having a Ferrari, brilliant. I'm not going to knock that. What I'm saying is that really what you want, or is that a piece of software installed by by social media, by your culture, by your peer group, etc.? All right. Now, maybe. So, who are you? You said, who are you? Now, there is. If you don't know that, you can't share that. So people won't trust you because they sniff it, because you're being fake. But you don't realize you're being fake because you are unconsciously driven to wear the mask.
Yeah.
Right. So if you want to be a good salesman, if you want to be a good CEO, work on yourself. Right. Yeah. Because if you haven't got alignment with who you really are, you're going to be serving the wrong God. You will be chasing the wrong dream. Your ladder will be pointed up the wrong wall. Yeah. And you climb it and you get to the top of it and you go, oh, fuck.
Look over your shoulder.
There's actually, I'm feeling hollow, empty, and fucking all up now. Why? Because you've climbed the wrong mountain.
Correct.
Right. It definitely resonates to me. I think your earlier point as well, in terms of kind of you build a company to make yourself money, essentially, is like phase one. And then phase two is how do you help people? Like we've definitely had a part of that journey where it's like, well, we keep churning a lot of clients here, but these ones, we're doing a really good job. We're retaining them and growing. Why is that? And it's, well, we're providing business value and making them a lot of money. And what is it that we're doing for them? And there's a common theme and a thread that we then keep on going. But I think to your point here, I think I used to have a pitching voice. And I think you probably know what I mean by that. But like when you go into pitching mode and presentation mode, and it's like, I'm here to prove myself, and then you can pay us money for a contract. And I think over the years, it's evolved into, I'm going to have a chat with someone, figure out what their problems are, ask them probably twice as many questions as they ask me. And then at the end of it, if we can help them, I'll draw up a proposal. If we can't help them, I'll give them some advice and tell them kind of where they should look, but in a genuinely I'm going to help them style, that I think this is valuable. If I was in their shoes, I'd buy it. If I wouldn't buy it, then I won't offer it. And I think that's the sort of thing that you then need to go into, actually, just that's more authentic. And I think that comes across when you do that within sales. It's okay, well, if I'm trying to help someone, they're on my side. They're trying to help me. They're not just, I don't know, the whole cliched car salesman sort of technique of they're just, I don't know what they're not saying and I don't quite trust them.
Yeah.
It's actually, I do trust them.
So Kevin, in that moment, I turn everything off normally doing these. My LinkedIn was turned on. Someone's pinged me who I don't know. And the title is, Let's Connect. Really? You don't know me, I don't know you, and you think I want to connect with you off the back of this. And then it'll be some nonsense about, this is what we do, this is the kind of product we've got, and it'd be great to talk, and we help people like you solve exactly the problem of becoming famous. And it's like, you know nothing about me, and the last thing in the world I want is to be famous. It's the same point, Kevin and Dan. It's the same point.
Well, are they offering you a free webinar?
Let me have a quick look. I'll let you know now live.
If I can get a white paper about a topic I'm not interested in, then I'm really sold on it.
Yeah, this is about, I hope everything's fine with you. Challenging times. I do this. It'd be great to be part of your network. Maybe we could help you someday. It's just nonsense. Who believes? Why would you spend even a minute of your day writing some crap like that? Why would you bother? Who taught that person that was a great thing to do?
Well, nobody. Well, because no one's thinking, and what they are thinking when they are thinking, what do I want?
Yeah.
What does this guy want? And actually, if you thought about it, then you wouldn't do it. But it's coming from a place of scarcity and a place of fear and a place of manipulation,
and a place of wearing the suit, wearing the mask. That person's been told to put a mask on, and this is how you get business.
Well, and it's a rictus grin. It's not true. It's not real, and you can see it a mile off. And exactly. I think this point of being true is people are primal creatures. We're social beings. We sniff people out, and if someone's a bit shifty, you sniff it, and you might. And so if you're not, again, truly telling the truth, and your product really isn't helping people, then the manipulation is just, people will sniff it. And that's what goes down, and you know it, and your gut tells you when someone's not all right, and you maybe can't put your finger on it. But and so if you're not getting the sales, if you're not getting the business, and it's really difficult, then maybe it's because you got to look in your own heart and look in your own spirit and say, well, really, am I serving these people, or am I just manipulating them? And that's by the way, it's a difficult thing to do, because you may have built an entire business, and if you're running that business, you're the entrepreneur, which is not true to that principle, and it'll be very, very difficult. I mean, so I was lucky in a way. My business exploded, and I was given an opportunity to rebuild it on a better set of principles. But it's hard to do that when your business is doing okay, but it's not really quite going where you want it to go, or it's not actually. It's very difficult. You gotta maybe bite the bullet, but that's
exactly
hard.
So we're about 50 minutes in, and we've overshot our time with you, Dan, and you've got things to do, I'm sure.
I just chill out every day.
Quarter of an hour. So why don't we draw it to a conclusion, which is, I'll ask Dan and then Kevin. So what's your message, Dan, to people listening to this overall? What's the thing that you'd ask people to stick in their head tomorrow morning when they wake up?
I would say, I think that it's interesting because we talked about principles here.
Yeah.
And I think the genuine principle is, how can you serve other people? And by other people, I mean maybe your customer in the context of sales, right? And think about the word service genuinely. And again, often go, but I see this all the time, particularly with, like, we work with early stage companies. They go, we know what to do. We figured that out. The product does this. But the point is really, is that serving your customer, or are you just saying, I built this thing, now let's try and shoehorn it into my customer's life? Because if you're not genuinely serving people, then it's just going to be hard. You're going to flog. You can flog yourself, and you can flog your staff, and you can flog the client, but it's just hard because you're swimming against the tide. Yeah. And it's much more straightforward over time if you align yourself with what people need, not what you want them to want, what they need, and then deliver against that. And so this principle of service to others is I think a far greater, a better foundational principle on which to build a business. That's what I've done, and it's a longer game, because in the short term I could have manipulated the world and made more cash sooner. Yep. But a better long-term game is to build on that principle, and then your life gets simpler over time, not more complex over time.
Brilliant, Dan. Kevin, what are you taking away from this?
Yeah, I think to build on that, like playing the long game, it just reminded and triggered a thought of one of the long-term clients that I've worked with. The way I built credibility with them is I told them to stop working with us. And I did that because their website was a bit of a disaster. They needed to redesign it. They needed to redevelop it. And until then, SEO would have been papering over the cracks. So I literally told them that in the same amount of words: consolidate the SEO budget you're spending with us right now. Sort out your website. That's not something that we offer as a service. We can help you to find someone, and then come back once that's fixed, and it will maximize the value, and it'll be much more efficient and effective for you. And they came back immediately, but again, we helped them to go through that process. We lost money on it in the short term, and then we've got a client that we've retained for 4 or 5 years afterwards that they'll instantly trust what I'm saying because I'm on their side, and I think that's really important. The last thing I'll touch upon is something that we've mentioned, is just how do you get the best out of yourself? Is it a cold shower first thing in the morning? Is it working in 20 to 25 minute sprints on specific tasks where you're single tasking and focused? And like, just for me, over the years, just understanding what are those behaviors, when am I at my best, and thinking it through, and then trying to build that into a daily routine, I think is really effective. So just trying to have a bit more awareness and around when are you at your best. Equally, when are you not at your best? When should you just switch off and go for a walk and actually leave it alone, rather than trying to plow on through when it's just not happening? I think like just understanding your brain, your body, your mindset, it's how you get the best out of yourself, I think is really key from a entrepreneur perspective, but for anyone really.
Definitely. I think mine, I'm going to reflect on the service to others, Dan. If I look back over my kind of, not over all my life by a long chalk, but kind of perhaps more recently, I do try and spend more time. I'm not sure I always succeed, but I do try and spend more time thinking through the kind of problems that my kind of typical client has, and really thinking it through, and really thinking beyond the books I've read and beyond the topics, and really, really delving in deeply into those kind of problems. And then when I meet people that are kind of hopefully my type of customer, I just kind of talk about those kind of problems and the things I find and what other people tend to do and things that help them. And that starts a conversation. And my longest sales cycle is 10 years. Because you just keep talking to people who have got that common interest. And then one day, maybe they buy from you. Or one day, maybe they don't. But it doesn't really matter, because I'm not chasing the short-term dollar, because that's the way to insanity, I believe. Dan, it's been amazing, more amazing than I could possibly have thought when I invited you onto the podcast. So thank you for being who you are,
well,
basically.
That's very kind. Yes, well, I'm obviously amazing. So yeah, I'm pleased you finally woke up.
And anyone that knows Dan knows that he's taking the piss right now.
No, I'm not. I'm deadly serious.
Of course.
You look like Eric Morgan for a second there, mate.
Well, it's Harry Hill I was going for, but
Harry Hill, because on Harry Hill, exactly. Thank you. It's been really good, Dan. Thanks a lot, mate.
That's
my pleasure. All right, buddy.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. We hope you learned something new and useful about entrepreneurship. We'd love it if you could rate or review us on the app you use to listen to this on. Thanks.